Everyone's waiting for GPT-5 like it's going to solve all of their problems. Better reasoning, fewer hallucinations, maybe even some magical new capabilities we can't even think of yet. And yeah, it'll probably be incredible, but after building AI infrastructure for 8 months and generating over $128,000 in the process, I can tell you exactly what GPT-5 won't fix about your business. See, I've watched this movie before. When GPT-4 came out, everyone thought it would revolutionize the industry, and technically it did, but the agencies that were struggling before are still struggling now. And the ones that are crushing it, they were already winning with GPT 3.5. Because here's the truth. The difference between successful and failing AI agencies has nothing to do with which model you're using and how good the AI systems and tools are. Everything to do with 5 fundamental things that won't change even if GPT-5 can write Shakespeare while doing your taxes. So let me show you what actually matters. First, we have the model trap. Thinking that the better model will make, your systems better, will make it easier to make money. That's not the case. A basic agency on GPT 3.5 can be making 10K a month in revenue. A lot of the systems I build, it's the systems and the outcomes. It's not, the model, right? With GPT-4, you can have a premium agency that's way better, but only making 8K a month. With GPT-5, it doesn't matter how good the model is. It just doesn't matter, right? Maybe you have even more complex systems, even more tech focused. But when everyone has GPT-5, how do you differentiate yourself? This is the commodity trap, right? The tragedy of the commons. Ultimately, trust still beats tech. When you're working with a client, what they're evaluating is, 30% of it is like, how good is your solution? How good is the tech of your solution? What features are you giving them? But 70, maybe even 80 or 90% is, what is your credibility? How reliable are you? How deeply do you understand their business? How much are you focused on them and solving their problems versus making yourself look good, right? So this is the trust equation, right? What clients are actually buying are confidence in you, your track record, how deeply you understand their business, how much you can reduce the risk for them when they buy, right? And so when we're thinking about this, you're not pitching the latest model. You're not pitching technical complexity or feature lists. You're pitching confidence, authority, and the ability to solve problems without a bunch of perceived risk on their end. Ultimately, distribution wins wars. If you have distribution, you have everything, right? And so, with agency, using GPT 3.5, if they had the right system, they could reach out to 100, get 100 prospects per day by reaching out to, 10,000 people per day. If you have GPT-5, it doesn't matter how good the personalized email is that you're sending. If you're only reaching like 10 prospects a day, you're not going to close any business. Whereas with the distribution, you can get to 10x the amount of revenue that, would have otherwise come your way. So ultimately, distribution, your ability to set up high quality client acquisition systems is what beats technology, right? With the best systems, with really good distribution, cold email, content marketing, partner networks, referral systems. If all of these are in place for you and you're doing high quality versions of each one of these, that's where the real money comes from, because the distribution is how people figure out about you. Most people don't know you exist. With better distribution, you can use AI to create these distribution systems, but it's not easy, right? So ultimately, the system itself is better than just whatever capabilities the model currently has, right? So with no system, you might be able to use the model to get some results, but not much. It's going to take a lot to maintain. The client's going to be confused. But with the right system, it doesn't matter how good the AI could suck, but you could still get them predictable output. It could be running by itself. It could have really clear value, right? And so businesses have been around forever, right? We've had businesses before AI. So nothing fundamentally changes except the ease at which you can execute on the systems, but you still need to deeply understand the system, right? You still need to have a process that gets people predictable results and that's infinitely scalable, right? If it's hard to scale, if it needs constant management, and if it's chaotic and hard to understand, it doesn't matter if it's GPT-5 underneath the hood. What matters is that there's a process that can be run. Let's say you're trying to create an AI, recruiting operating system. You have the sourcing all of the applicants, screening them, communicating with them, giving them the analytics. You could build this on GPT 3.5. It doesn't really matter. Like, you don't need that powerful of an AI model to build out the following AI operating system. What you need is the ability to understand the processes, to understand the SOPs, to understand what needs to happen in order to achieve a good result for this industry, for this part of a business. And once you understand that, It doesn't really matter how good the AI model is, because you understand the fundamentals of business. You understand that if you just do a one-time project, you're going to burn out on, one-offs. Whereas if you become a strategic partner, if you can solve big enough problems in their business and show them the outcomes that you're giving them, you'll have compound growth. You'll achieve predictable income, and you'll actually scale a business, and it'll help you live the life that you want, right? Whereas, on the other hand, you could, and I've flirted with burnout in the last 2 to 6 months. And so I know, like, I had at one point too many, one-off clients, and I didn't know how much money I was going to make next month. And so, like, I was almost hitting burnout. But now my reality is very different. Like, if you can focus on building those partnerships, building that consulting basis, building that recurring revenue, in January you might have 5K, February 10, eventually you're getting to 20K MRR over time. Whereas with one-offs, you might get 10K the first month, 15K the third month. You might get, 30K, but none of it is recurring. So what doesn't change is that clients, they want to see the results. They want predictable revenue, and retaining the clients is more important than acquiring. Acquisition is really, really important. But if you're in this kind of like one-off project, builder mindset, then it doesn't matter how great your client acquisition is, because you're not keeping any of the clients. And so your revenue is not actually compounding in any meaningful way. So ultimately, it's your CAC to LTV ratio, and you want to figure out what it costs to acquire a customer. But if you can 10x the LTV, which is what most people think about, what is like, how do I get 5K up front or 6K up front instead of 2K? What I think about is like, maybe I'm only going to get 2K up front, but the LTV is going to be 20K, right? And so then that means that my cost to acquire a customer is like 20 to 1. If it costs me, $1,000 with all the cold email system, whatever, to get a client, and the LTV is 20K, that's a 20 to 1 LTV to CAC ratio. And that's good. Anything over 15 LTV to CAC is where you want to be. And so how do you do this? You take 3 months and you rapidly test offers and markets. This is what I teach in AI Entrepreneur University. What I teach is creating offers, creating tons of offers, testing tons of markets, using these prompts to deeply understand and reflect on your offer, the market that you're reaching out to, the pain points of that market, deeply understanding how they think about the pain points, the outcomes, and then this is how you create your offers and identify your markets. And then you create the cold email campaigns. So you have value ladders, you're speaking their language, you're writing campaigns, you're crafting irresistible CTAs, and you're writing, a dozen campaigns before you launch. And over the course of a couple months, you'll be able to test tons of offers. And if you have GPT-5, great, but if you're testing, I would rather test 10 times as many offers on a GPT-4 model than try to perfect an offer with GPT-5, right? Ultimately, the model doesn't even matter that much. What matters is how many offers can you test? How rapidly can you test them? So the goal isn't, most people do this. Like, I've seen this too many times. It's so frustrating to hear people tell me, like, I spent the last 3 months refining this offer. And I'm like, so how much money have you made from it? Well, I'm still refining it. Cool. Have you launched it yet? No, I haven't launched it yet. Why haven't you done that? I don't know. I want it to be perfect. Why do you want it to be perfect? Because I feel like if it's not perfect, I won't make any money, right? Whereas the people that are crushing it, how many offers have you created? I created 10 in the last month. How many have you tested? All of them. How many emails have you sent to all of them? This should be like 500 to 5,000. That was wrong. I sent 5,000 emails to all 10 offers. Oh, so you have 50,000 emails and 5K to each offer. Yeah. How many offers have worked? Well, 1 or 2 out of the 10 have worked. Awesome. How many leads have you converted from those 1 or 2? I've converted 5 clients in the last 30 days. Boom, right? You can see the difference. You can see the difference with someone that has high testing velocity, that is testing 10 offers in 3 months, versus one that's trying to refine the perfect offer, but then after 3 months is back at square one because it doesn't work. So the real opportunity is not using GPT-5 to make the craziest system. It's to be smarter. It's to be more strategic. It's to build with whatever's currently there. You can switch out the model later. Focus on the processes, the systems, the outcomes, the distribution. Lock in those MRR clients and create moats. Because, someone that's just entering the agency space today versus me, who's making 28K MRR on autopilot, and I'm able to figure out these processes. I can spend all of my time, I'm building out sales teams, I'm building out implementation teams, I'm building out all this stuff. And basically what I have realized and where I'm at with everything is, someone that's just getting started, it's going to be hard for them to compete with 28K MRR 6 clients, learning the processes, the outcomes, how to be a consultant, the sales processes. I have all these reps under my belt. And so, what should you focus on today if you're just getting started? Well, it's not impossible. You have to focus on the right things though. First, get really good at client acquisition. I recommend cold email. It's the best client acquisition system, especially with AI. It makes it that much easier. Once you get it right, you're just basically just printing money. Then once you get clients, focus on retention. Focus on what is that client experience? What deliverables are you giving them? Are you giving them a dashboard? How are they understanding the work that you're doing and seeing the value? Then it's like, what are your internal processes to deliver that? How are you positioning yourself? And then ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal is to build as much recurring revenue as you can. So that is the process here. That is what separates the winners from the losers, and why GPT won't change all that. GPT-5 won't change all that much in the AI space. Maybe it creates some cool new agent, but ultimately it's about offer and market positioning. And it doesn't matter how good GPT-5's agents are. If they get better, cool. If you have the right market and the right offer, you can then implement whatever new thing comes out to more effectively help you reach that outcome. But you will likely say no to a lot of things too, because you realize, oh, this is a really cool new VO3 Google model, but it's like, is that going to help me deliver better sales infrastructure for my clients? No, then I don't give a shit about VO3, right? And so ultimately, that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about value creation and how can AI help us create better vehicles for value creation, as opposed to, what cool new tool do I need to learn? If you're thinking, what cool new tool do I need to learn? You've already lost. You need to be thinking, how can AI most effectively be a vehicle for value creation in the markets and the industries that I already deeply understand the pain points of? And then that value that I know can be created, what is the best way to position that as an offer that I can put in front of people? And how many different offers and markets? Like, what are the top 10 markets I think would be receptive to this offer? And how do I, send 5,000 emails to each of those markets to see which one is the most receptive and which one I found product market fit in? That's the process. That's how I have scaled my business. That's what I teach in AI Entrepreneur University. That's ultimately what the playbook that I'm building out in here. And if you run it, you will be successful. If you don't, good luck.